Well, hello, Phil here from the Blue Envelope channel. There was a surprising announcement this month in December 2023 that beards would now be allowed for Jehovah's Witness men, even on up through circuit overseers and Bethelites. It was an announcement that I definitely did not see coming and would not have predicted.
A surprise, to be sure, but a welcome one.
But that being said, now that it was authorized to have a beard for men, a lot of folks have been saying, well, that's great for guys, but what about the women in the organization? And the number one thing that comes to mind, I think, is when will women be allowed to wear pants to the meetings, out in the field service, up on the stage, that kind of thing. It's definitely mainstream now that women wear pants in professional environments. So thinking about that, I guess I thought it'd be kind of interesting to look through the literature over the decades and see exactly what they have said about whether or not women can wear pants to the meetings and why or why not. So we'll check out some of these references that have been published by the organization, the society, over the decades. So the first clear one I found was back in 1933. This was the Golden Age, September 27th. Men like manly men and womanly women. That is why men that dress in skirts make a poor hit with men, and why men do not rave over women dressed in bloomers or street pajamas. Not, however, that the women have not a perfect right to wear them if they choose, but that women look more attractive in skirts. A Paris court decided that a famous woman athlete was free to dress as she pleased as a private citizen, but as she insists on dressing in male garb, she can with propriety be excluded from the French Women's Sporting Federation unless, when she attends the federation, she adopts women's attire. Seems like a sensible rule. Women should dress as women, men as men. So a little fashion advice there from the organization. Women just look more attractive in skirts. The French athlete they were talking about was named Violette Morris. She was a very well-known athlete in the 1920s and 30s. Her motto at the time was, anything a man can do, Violette can do. And she sure did. She played pretty much every sport that existed. She drove race cars. Really an interesting character. And that was one of the things she was most known for, was wearing, quote-unquote, men's clothing when she was out and about. And she was banned from the 1928 Olympics, actually the first Olympics that allowed women to compete, and she was banned because she wouldn't wear, quote-unquote, women's clothing. Unfortunately, in later years, she did become a Nazi collaborator, and she was executed by the French resistance. So not a simple character, but a very interesting character. Definitely check her out on Wikipedia. This isn't directly related to whether women can wear pants, but there was one other funny part about miniskirts in this article. The minute you find a man who sees anything wrong with a girl's wearing short skirts, you may know right away that you cannot trust him as far as you could throw a bull by the tail. The biggest squawkers about a thing of this kind are mentally unbalanced on the subject. I just thought that was a funny quote compared to what the society would say in later decades about miniskirts. Next, we'll look at questions from readers back in the day when they were actual questions sent in by readers and not just questions put in there by the society to make a point. So this is one from the Watchtower, October 1st, 1951. The question, when Deuteronomy 22:5 says that a woman should not wear a man's clothes, does it mean that women should not wear slacks? This was their answer. Deuteronomy 22:5 reads, there shall not be a man's apparel on a woman, neither shall a man put on a woman's clothing, for whoever doeth so is an abomination to Jehovah thy God. This text certainly was not recorded with the thought in mind of preventing modern women from wearing slacks. Men did not wear slacks or trousers when this was recorded, but what we would view as dresses today. In parts of the Orient, in fact, the men wore dress-like robes, and the women wore pajama-like trousers of varying styles. So the wearing of slacks or even work pants, such as around a farm, is not forbidden by this text and is an individual matter. The women can use good judgment as to time and place and what is accepted as proper in the section where they reside. In some sections where winters are severe, many women wear trousers or ski suits or some similar garment that covers and protects their legs. Such is not scripturally wrong. At Deuteronomy 22:5, the Bible is not dealing with fashions or fretting over styles, but apparently it is here forbidding persons of one sex from wearing the clothing of the opposite sex for purposes of deceit, to appear of the opposite sex, to hide the true facts. Men should not try to deceitfully dress like women to hide the fact that they are men, nor should women try to dress in men's clothes to hide the fact that they are women. Being more specific, the Bible seems to be striking a blow against the sin of sodomy. It was a disgrace for a woman's hair to be shorn like a man's, and it was a dishonor for a man's hair to be allowed to grow long like a woman's. The woman was not to appear masculine by having short hair like a man's or by wearing clothes like a man's. It might suggest to others that she was available for unnatural sex uses. Likewise, the man. If he wore long hair like a woman's or garbed himself in women's clothes, he would certainly appear effeminate and open to propositions from men for unnatural sex use. So it is this deeper meaning with sodomy in view, and not a mere switching of clothes in itself that brings this practice under prohibition and makes it deserve the severe judgment, whoever doeth so is an abomination to Jehovah thy God. So we're going to see two basic reasons why women are not allowed to wear pants to the meetings and out in service. The first one is kind of what it's talking about here, that dressing up like a man is dishonest when you think about it. You're kind of pulling a fast one on the people. And additionally, it's a short road from there to homosexuality, transgenderism, and all sorts of quote-unquote unnatural sex uses. Unnatural because we definitely do not see any of that behavior among other mammals on Earth. And then the second argument you see in the literature is kind of a social one, that you wouldn't want to stumble anyone in the congregation. And it's kind of a circular argument because on the one hand, women don't wear pants so as not to stumble others. But on the other hand, people would only be stumbled because nobody's wearing pants in the congregation. So it would be unusual. So those are kind of the two main angles that you see in the literature, because to be honest, there's 0 verses in the Bible that say women don't wear pants to the meetings or out in service. Next, we'll go to an Awake magazine, July 8th, 1957. This was an article titled Lady Ministers of a New World. So initially it talked about how to dress when you're out in service. And then there's a subheading, Dressing for Meetings. It says, something can be said for the matter of meetings as well. Usually we like to dress up at this time. But do not forget, there are the small meetings to think of in the same way, our area Bible studies, which I believe would translate to the congregation book studies. We might think, well, this is an informal meeting, and I know everyone who will be there, so here at least I can let my hair down. Slacks will do, or anything comfortable. But it is not a come-as-you-are party. The public is invited to all our meetings, and persons will judge again by our appearance and conduct before they become mature in the truth. There's one other point in the article that says, sometimes we may say some like to go to church to show off their finery. No doubt this has its truth. But if an effort to look one's best is found to be so among those who worship false gods of this world, how much more indeed should those who represent the Most High God have a dignified appearance and bearing, though with no effort at display. So this is one of the rare articles where it actually comes out and says slacks are a no-go when you're going to the meetings or out in service. Usually they kind of dance around the subject a little bit, but yep, no slacks, even at a small meeting like the congregation book study in somebody's home. Next, we'll look at a questions from readers from 1972, April 1st. They raise the good question. Often there is much discussion about what is proper and what is improper in the matter of dress. Can we really set any rules on this? If not, why show so much concern? Good question, reader. So it's quite a long answer here. One point it makes is that, if you're not sure how to dress, look at everybody else in the congregation and then dress like them. So it has this illustration about we know the difference between talking and shouting at someone. Then it says, if we can understand the difference in degrees in such matters, why should it be difficult for any of us to apply the Bible standards on clothing, to know whether something is moderate or extreme, well-fitting or tight, modest or vain? If we are unsure, why not notice others around us? Within a congregation of genuine Christians, there are plenty of persons who very evidently manifest God's Spirit in their lives and show real appreciation for the counsel of His Word. How does our clothing compare with theirs? So this is kind of interesting because back in the early days of the Bible students, there was kind of this movement that what was the most important thing to be godly was to dress modestly and appropriately, to always speak mildly, never lose your temper. And then as the years went by, more admonition came out that that's stupid. You can't be worshiping God simply by what your exterior appearance is. It's more about your heart and then demonstrating that in preaching. And now by this point, we see it swinging back around to where, well, yeah, the preaching is still really important. Do lots of that. But also we do want you to do all those other things that Russell talked about dressing modestly. And so there's kind of saying the interior is good, but also the exterior is really important to show whether you're spiritual or not. which fits right into what Jesus was saying about the Pharisees and how they were whitewashed graves on the outside and full of dead men's bones on the inside. Definitely fits. So the article goes on to say that really it's a good thing we don't have specific rules about clothing exactly, because that it gives you room to demonstrate your loyalty to Jehovah. And those who love Jehovah the most will dress the most appropriately. It says, actually, if God's word gave us specific and detailed description and rules on what to wear, the whole matter would resolve down simply to our compliance or non-compliance therewith. As it is, the rules God has given us put to the test what we are inside, what is in our heart, with its associated faculty of conscience, and how much consideration we have for the spiritual welfare of others. So the entire question reduces down to this. If you had reason to believe that your dress was objectionable, not just to one or two individuals, but to many persons, particularly those whom you love, your family, your brothers in the faith, would you change? Would you want to do so? And even more important, if you had reason to believe that the effect of your appearance could be harmful to others because of the type of thinking it encouraged in their minds and hearts, would you sincerely regret that fact and be quick to correct it? So definitely leaning heavily on that social conformity aspect of why you wouldn't wear pants to the meetings. This is the first instance we see in these references of the point that, well, women should make the right decisions about their clothing. Their husband is the one who has the final say on how they're dressed. Of course, there are those who can make rules concerning dress. Who are these? Husbands and fathers. All the members of a man's household bear his name, and what they do reflects on his name. As the God-appointed family head, he can properly rule out certain clothing as objectionable. So this is the first of several times we'll see where it says basically the husband can pick out what his wife and children wear if he wants to. This article also addresses whether the elders can step in and tell people how to dress. But they, the elders, can use their own knowledge, understanding, and wisdom in determining whether someone is clearly setting a bad example or not in regard to the scriptural principles regarding dress. They may decide not to give prominence to such one in assignments they extend to others to represent or serve the congregation in congregational meetings. Such action would be governed not simply by the preferences or prejudices of one or two persons, but by the judgment of the body of elders in weighing any objections raised. So it's interesting how the elders can kind of bring to bear pressure on people to conform if they feel like they need to. In November 1st, 1972, we have another questions from readers, again bringing up Deuteronomy 22:5. Is it proper for a woman to wear slacks? And again, it leans into the homosexuality argument. The distinction between the sexes is of divine origin, and the law set forth at Deuteronomy 22:5 served to preserve that distinction. When it comes to appearance and attire, the usual thing is for a man to want to look like a man and for a woman to look like a woman. For an Israelite to have acted contrary to this deep internal sense of what is fitting could have led to homosexuality. Thus, the law at Deuteronomy 22:5 also opposed this sin. At the time the law was given, both men and women wore robes, but there was a definite difference between the garb of men and that of women. Similarly, in some parts of the earth today, both men and women wear slacks, but styles of slacks for women differ from those for men. Accordingly, the principle taught at Deuteronomy 22:5 would not rule out a woman's wearing slacks or pants. So it's good to know that slacks are not absolutely forbidden, and the article goes on to talk about when it might be appropriate where a woman could wear pants if she really wanted to. So if a woman were to put on a worn-out pair of her husband's trousers to do a job around the house or on the farm, she would not be going against the evident purpose of the law, namely to prevent confusion of sexual identity and sexual abuses. So, here it suggests that, you may not want to actually own any pants as a woman, but you could borrow an old pair of your husband's trousers to do some housework. Or, if you're working on a farm, that might not be forbidden. But beware, the article goes on. A Christian woman appreciates that whether it would be proper for her to wear slacks or pants depends upon factors other than her personal likes. She would not want to be the cause for stumbling others or bring reproach on the Christian congregation. Clothing that may not be looked on with disfavor if worn in the privacy of one's home or at work may be objectionable if worn at Christian meetings and when publicly proclaiming God's word or carrying on other public activity. So it kind of draws that distinction that maybe in the privacy of your own home behind closed doors you could wear pants, but definitely not out in public when you're working as one of Jehovah's Witnesses. 1973 Watchtower, March 1st, returns to our good old Deuteronomy 22:5. So while there are some styles of clothing that have similarity, such as women's slacks and men's trousers, yet there is usually a definite distinction in style or material. But when one wears clothing so that he or she is virtually indistinguishable from the opposite sex, this is bad in Jehovah's eyes. So this is an important point. You can wear pants sometimes as a woman, but they have to be womanly pants.
Michael, the pants don't have any pockets.
No, they don't. See? Italians don't wear pockets.
1975 Watchtower, August 15th. If slacks or pantsuits for women are frowned upon by many in the community, likely some different style of apparel for public dress would be advisable for a Christian sister. During cold weather, she likely could arrange to be exposed to the weather for shorter periods of time, or pause more frequently to warm herself. But in frigid climates, where everyone in the community wears clothing appropriate to the weather, such as slacks, surely it is proper for Christian women to do the same. In some places, pioneers have been aided thus to maintain robust health for putting in long hours in service. If a Christian sister is unsure about a particular style, she can discuss the situation with her husband or an elder in the Christian congregation. So this is kind of the one exception you see in the literature, that you can wear pants for field service if you live in a frigid area where everyone else wears ski pants outside in the winter. So in other words, if it lets you get more hours in preaching, then the organization would make an exception if everybody else is doing it too in that area. The impression I get from these passages is that it kind of only applies like above the Arctic Circle is where they're talking about. Otherwise, it's a no-go. And if your delicate female brain just can't figure out what clothes to wear, it's just too confusing, no problem. Just go consult a man in the congregation and he'll decide that for you. The Awake 1976, August 8th, addresses the issue of pants again. Certain styles have recently changed so drastically that clothes being worn now would have been socially and religiously unacceptable. Unacceptable! But a decade ago. In the past, the wearing of pants by women in public was generally considered in the Western world to be masculine and aggressive and was frowned upon. Today, the same outfit is part of an acceptable wardrobe in many larger cities of the United States, although still criticized in some circles. So please, women, stay away from those aggressive pants. For many women, the pantsuit is quite practical and comfortable when shopping or for informal wear. But in some areas, people would view it as unacceptable. Unacceptable! When, for example, attending religious meetings, a Christian woman is therefore wise to take into consideration the attitudes existing in the community where she lives. And what better community to consider than the congregation you're in? When a Christian woman's apparel causes others to question whether she is true to her religious professions, her clothing obviously is no longer modest. The determining factor in this is not whether the item is a dress, skirt, or a pair of slacks, but what is expected in that locality of one who professes to reverence God. Again, we all know that being reverent and true to your religious beliefs is all about the clothes you're wearing. It's about how you look. It's not about your internal thinking or the actions you take in your life. No, no, no. Certain clothing, such as slacks, may be worn by both men and women. When that is the case, care has to be exercised not to wear a style that would make it difficult to distinguish a man from a woman. This would be in line with the spirit the law recorded at Deuteronomy 22:5, no garb of an able-bodied man should be put upon a woman. This might be a good drinking game. Take a shot every time Deuteronomy 22:5 is used to justify why women shouldn't wear pants. The Kingdom Ministry, November 1981. Many of you brothers have expressed particular appreciation for comments that were made at the Kingdom Loyalty District Conventions last summer regarding proper Christian conduct, dress, and grooming. One of the talks you will recall stated very forcefully, why any servant of Jehovah God should want to imitate the styles that characterize the immoral, rebellious elements of the devil's world is difficult to understand. Why try to be like the world and so stand out as different among Jehovah's people? Should you not rather appear like Jehovah's people and so stand out as different when among worldlings? Whom are we trying to please? Whose favor are we currying? Why not take a cue regarding well-arranged dress and grooming from the mature brothers who have the greater responsibilities? Can we not take a hint and imitate their good example? Take a hint, people. Mamma mia, these rank and file witnesses. Have to tell them how to do everything.
Gosh!
The Watchtower, 1984, July 15th. Again, we return to good old Deuteronomy 22:5. The comment on it says, the principle in this text would not rule out a Christian woman's wearing slacks sometimes, as when working around the house or on a farm. And according to local custom and necessity, slacks may be the desired attire in very cold climates. So these seem to be the 3 times women are allowed to wear pants in the view of Jehovah's Witnesses. When you're doing housework, when you're working on a farm, or when you're above the Arctic Circle. It's a little confusing because on the one hand they say you should only wear womanly pants, but on the other hand that one reference said you should really only be wearing your husband's old worn out trousers. So I guess that's a conscience matter. This was interesting. This was a comment from readers back when they had that at the end of the Awake magazine's 1985, March 22nd. The reader wrote, I found your article, Fig Leaves, Fashions, and Figures, very informative, but I must also admit feeling a bit excluded from it. Because of a physical disability, I walk with the aid of a leg brace and a cane. I feel very self-conscious about this, and so I hide the brace as much as possible by wearing long pants all the time. This causes me to feel different from other women, especially in situations where they generally wear skirts or dresses. Please give me some tips on fashion for women who feel that they must wear slacks. So, we're getting some rare fashion advice from the men who are the editors of Awake magazine. They write, there can be circumstances such as those mentioned where slacks might well be the more appropriate and modest type of dress. If so, the fashion tip would be to select a style of pantsuit that is attractive, fits properly, and meets the requirements of well-arranged dress with soundness of mind. Then, wear such with the dignity suitable for the occasion. So, their fashion verdict? Go pantsuit or go home.
If you girls want to really knock the boys out, you should project boldness with a power pantsuit combo.
The Awake 1987, February 8th. Now, this isn't specifically talking just about women, but both men and women, this is advice. Dungarees or blue jeans may be ideal for farming or working around the house or on casual occasions, but they are hardly appropriate for formal occasions, for business, or at meetings for worship. So this was a good clarification because it did kind of confuse me about wearing jeans because there's really not a whole lot of difference between men's jeans and women's jeans. So how do you pick womanly pants if they're blue jeans? And the advice really is you probably just shouldn't be wearing blue jeans. And I'm not sure, this may be the origin of the policy that denim skirts are banned for Jehovah's Witness women. Watchtower, 1988, August 15th. Again, our good old Deuteronomy 22:5. Styles that blatantly and deliberately feminize men or masculinize women are definitely out of order.
Kirkland, you are out of order! You're out of order! You're out of order!
1989 Awake, we get into the Young People Ask articles about dress and grooming. Definitely have some good points we want to consider. This was the article, What's the Secret of Choosing the Right Clothes? Millie, one of Jehovah's Witnesses, attended a school where violence was prevalent. Dressing as if headed for a Christian meeting would have made her overly conspicuous. So she wore a modest pair of jeans during school hours, as that was accepted at her school. But since she engaged in Bible educational work after classes, she took along a dress. Change of role, change of attire. Another plug for dresses is a little later in the article. Tammy, for example, is a young woman serving as a full-time evangelizer. Although high hemlines are quite the rage where she lives, she says, for me, slightly below the knee is a comfortable length. This accords with Christian modesty. This is unrelated to whether women can wear pants, but the picture in this article was very funny. We have these 3 young gents here. The caption, trendy clothes go out of style quickly. Conservative styles for various functions tend to last. And when you look at this picture, I mean, look at those 3 guys. It's like that picture could have been taken last week instead of 1989. So just confirmation there. You should definitely take the fashion advice from the editors of the Awaken Watchtower. 1992 Watchtower, August 15th, drives home the point again that the man of the household can make the fashion decisions for his family. Of course, an elder having strong opinions or a certain taste in dress and grooming may decide accordingly for himself and his family. More advice about dresses in another Young People Ask article, How Can I Improve My Wardrobe? If you are one of Jehovah's Witnesses, you will also want to consider your need for suitable clothes to wear to Christian meetings, inasmuch as casual clothing is inappropriate for worship. In lands where Western-style garb is worn, young men usually wear dress slacks, a dress shirt, a tie, and a jacket. Young women usually wear a dress or a skirt and blouse. Similar apparel is also worn in the door-to-door preaching work. So another one of those rare instances where they actually come out and say that women should be wearing dresses and skirts to the meetings. We get some advice for parents in the Awake 1999 under the title, The Kinds of Clothes We Wear, Does It Really Matter? Thus, it is important that parents, by word and example, cultivate in their children wholesome attitudes toward and good taste in clothing. This may mean that parents need to be firm at times as they reason with their son or daughter. Now, we know that during the teen years in particular, it's developmentally appropriate for kids to try out different looks, different music, different interests as they figure out who they are as a person. But a loving parent really needs to squash that tendency down in their children and be determined that their children turn out exactly how they are. Now, if necessary, would being firm at times include physical punishment? Well, it's important to remember what the book, The Secret of Family Happiness, had to say on page 60. The Bible in no way endorses angry whippings or severe beatings, which bruise and even injure a child. So notice that when whipping or beating your child, ensure that you aren't angry when you're doing it. And make sure the beating isn't severe. Just beat your child the normal amount. Notice too that a distinction is drawn between leaving bruises and injuring a child. So your beatings, your whippings, they may leave bruises. Try and avoid that so there's no evidence visible. But what you really want to make sure is not to take that to the next level to where you're actually injuring your child, because giving them bruises from a beating, that's not an injury. So make sure you don't cross that line. Watchtower, 2002, August 1st. So this article is trying to address the fact that by this point, 2002, there are, many women in politics and business that have switched to wearing pants instead of dresses. And so that's kind of invalidated the Watchtower argument that if you're a good, respectable woman, you can't go out wearing pants in public. And so they say, you really can't go by what people are doing out in the world anymore. Styles of dress and grooming have deteriorated in recent years. Even the dress code of business and professional people does not always provide a reliable standard of what is appropriate for Christians. So yeah, just because you see a woman in business or government wearing pants and it's accepted, that doesn't mean it's acceptable for Christians.
As time has passed, we have noted that in many lands, it is acceptable for men who hold responsible positions in business and government to wear beards. Thus, whether a brother wears a beard is a personal decision.
Now, I know it seems to be confusing listening to what he said versus what we just read in that Watchtower article. Anyway, here's another point. Christian family heads must take an interest in the appearance of family members. Out of respect for the glorious God whom they worship, family heads should not hesitate to offer firm, loving counsel when such is necessary. But remember, don't leave any bruises, Dad. In 2005, the book Organized to Do Jehovah's Will came out. That is the public handbook or rule book for all Jehovah's Witnesses in comparison to the confidential rule book, which only elders have access to. So this is the rule book that's still being used today. And the point in particular here is it reminds everyone that if a woman is to visit Bethel, one of the branch offices of Jehovah's Witnesses, well, that's another place that she should be wearing a skirt or a dress. We see here, after discussing how to dress at meetings and out in service, it says, the same would apply when we visit world headquarters or a branch office of Jehovah's Witnesses. Remember, the name Bethel means house of God. Therefore, we should dress and conduct ourselves as we would when we attend meetings at the Kingdom Hall. Now, helpfully, the organization produced a pamphlet a few years ago giving really detailed examples of the do's and don'ts of how to dress when you're at Bethel. It's called Dress and Grooming for Visitors Touring Bethel. So you can see here, pants on a woman, definitely forbidden. But also, even if you're wearing a dress, but then you're wearing sneakers, that's also forbidden. Now, they do give the example that when you're inside your room, your own apartment, that if you really wanted to, then you could wear pants as a woman. Or if you're off the compound and you're out and about, you could wear pants.
So I got that going for me, which is nice.
However, the first edition of this pamphlet, the 2008 edition, mentions that even if you're a woman going down to eat in the Bethel dining room, that pants would be forbidden. Now, there's also some handy tips that just because you're a woman and you're wearing a skirt or a dress and you're not wearing sneakers, it doesn't mean you're in the clear. If we look at the page, unacceptable for visiting Bethel, we find that denim skirts are unacceptable. And that's because Jehovah has really strong opinions about the material that skirts are made out of. Now, you might think that cotton skirts are forbidden, and that's not true. Jehovah's a cool guy. He allows some cotton skirts, but cotton that has been turned into denim is unacceptable. Unacceptable! And we all know this. I don't even need to go into all the Bible verses to explain why cotton skirts are acceptable, but denim skirts are unacceptable. What else do we have to watch out for? Well, tight-fitting skirts, unacceptable. Short skirts, unacceptable. Unacceptable! Skirts with a high slit in them, unacceptable. Unacceptable! Unacceptable! All right, women, you got all that? Now go on. Go enjoy your carefree visit to Bethel. In 2008, the book Keep Yourselves in God's Love was released, and at the time, this was the second book that all new witnesses were required to study after their baptism. And chapter 5 discusses dress and grooming under the title, How to Keep Separate from the World. And it, as you might imagine, discusses all the usual points in scriptures we've seen already. The notable thing in this chapter is that in both pictures where the legs of Jehovah's Witness women are visible, all those women are wearing skirts or dresses. In 2012, a brochure was released with the title, Who Are Doing Jehovah's Will Today? And this was designed to be an additional study aid that would be used with everyone studying with Jehovah's Witnesses. So you do your main publication study first, and then at the end, you do one of these lessons from this brochure. Now, lesson 8 is titled, Why Do We Dress Up for Our Meetings? So you can kind of see where this is going already. It says, have you noticed in the pictures in this brochure how well dressed Jehovah's Witnesses are when attending their congregation meetings? Why do we pay such attention to our dress and grooming? And it's true, as you flip through this brochure, there is lots of photos of meetings and assemblies and whatnot. In every single one, the women are wearing skirts or dresses. In lesson 13, a few pages on, we get that classic JW picture. So the male version would be, you have the two clean-shaven witness men studying with the worldly man who has a beard. And then ideally, towards the end of the literature, you would see the man clean-shaven, and that's how you know he's progressing spiritually. I'm not sure how they're going to handle that now with the beards being allowed. But anyways, this is the female version of that, where we have the two witness women wearing skirts, and then the worldly woman wearing pants. And ideally, you would see towards the end of the literature that she's now wearing a skirt or a dress herself, and that's how you know clearly that she's become more spiritual. Lesson 26 is titled, How Can We Help Maintain Our Kingdom Hall? And the thing I noticed in this is the photographs that all the women are wearing skirts or dresses. So even when the only reason you're at the Kingdom Hall is to clean it, to mop the floor, pants are still a no-go. You need to be wearing a skirt. Watchtower 2012, August 15th, again leans into that reasoning of the social aspect that you don't want to stumble anyone. But what if an elder was to tell you that your preference in attire is causing serious offense to a number of publishers in the congregation? How would you respond? Would you become defensive, resentful, or stubborn? A foundation law of God's kingdom is that all citizens imitate Christ. Regarding Jesus' example, the Apostle Paul wrote, "Let us each of us please his neighbor in what is good for his upbuilding, for even the Christ did not please himself." For the sake of peace in the congregation, a mature Christian is willing to yield without resentment to the consciences of others. The 2016 Watchtower leans into that reasoning again. Consider another example. Suppose you are drawn to a certain style of dress that could possibly disturb some in the congregation, yet you may know of no specific Bible law that forbids it. What is Jehovah's mind on the matter? The paragraph continues, "As devoted servants of Jehovah, we are concerned not only with our personal preferences, but with the effect that our dress and grooming could have on others. Modesty and love move us to take into account the opinions of fellow believers in order to avoid distracting or even offending them." Later in 2016, a Watchtower study article, "Does Your Style of Dress Glorify God?" This article has a lot of stuff in it on this subject. Notably, this is the study article that first raised the idea that theoretically there are some places in the earth where you could be an appointed brother and wear a beard. So that kind of cracked open the Pandora's box that brought us to where we are today. But what does it say about dresses? Well, it starts right off in paragraph 1. "You saw a lot of casual clothing, especially when it was hot," reported a Dutch newspaper regarding a meeting of church leaders. "That is not the case at the Convention of Jehovah's Witnesses. Boys and men wear a jacket and tie, while the girls' and women's skirt length is in good taste yet modern. Indeed, Jehovah's Witnesses are often commended for adorning themselves in respectable dress with modesty and good judgment." Paragraph 3, we get our good old buddy Deuteronomy 22:5. "The law showed Jehovah's strong feelings against clothing that does not make clear the distinction between male and female, what has been described in our day as unisex fashion. From God's stated direction about clothing, we clearly see that God is not pleased with styles of dress that feminize men, that make women look like men, or that make it hard to see the difference between men and women." And in the article, we get that classic witness picture again. We have the two witness women, both wearing their skirts, and then we see the worldly woman wearing her unholy unisex pants. Paragraph 10 I thought was just notable because it says kind of what we're striving for. We're striving for a haven of moral chastity. And I mean, some people go to Disney World or Universal Studios, but really, where else would you want to go than to be in a haven of moral chastity? Paragraph 16. "Many stores cater to popular fashions, so it may take more time and effort to find modest skirts, dresses, and blouses, or suits and slacks that are not too tight. Yet, fellow believers will likely note and appreciate the results of our sincere efforts to find attractive and appropriate clothing, and the satisfaction we have of bringing glory to our loving Heavenly Father more than makes up for any inconveniences that we may face to dress so as to glorify Him." So the one point, it kind of separates out what men and women wear. So the women are going to get the modest skirts, dresses, and blouses. The men are going to get the suits and slacks that are not too tight. The other point at the end of that paragraph I thought was kind of interesting because the conclusion you kind of get to so far, reading all these references, is that for a woman, wearing a skirt is kind of almost the ideal form of clothing. It's sort of like it was designed for her by Jehovah God himself. And yet here the paragraph is talking about inconveniences that we may face dressing in a Christian way. Are there inconveniences that women face when wearing skirts instead of pants? Well, I'd point you to a very funny thread in the XJW subreddit this week. A man posted the question, "Ladies, why do you want pants anyways? What's the big deal? Dresses look pretty comfy." And this poor guy gets completely roasted in the responses, although I will say he's pretty good-natured about it. So definitely check out that thread. In 2021, the organization released the current Bible study program that witnesses use out in the field, Enjoy Life Forever, an interactive Bible study course. As you might imagine, it certainly addresses dress and grooming. Right towards the end of the book, though, in lesson 52, Why Our Clothing and Appearance Matter. So you got to be in pretty deep before you realize how you will have to dress as a woman in the organization, if you haven't realized already. Point 5 references everyone's favorite Bible verse. Although Christians are not under the Mosaic law, it reveals Jehovah's thinking. Read Deuteronomy 22:5 and then discuss this question. Why should we avoid dress and grooming that makes men look like women or women look like men? In 2019, there was a morning worship talk released. It was Jeffrey Jackson, governing body member, and he was discussing the point that, it's really not exactly the most important thing what the Bible says or doesn't say about things like women wearing pants, which is an important point because it doesn't say anything about it. But he says the more important thing is, do we fit in with how everyone else is dressing in the Kingdom Hall?
Well, if we have questions in our mind with regard to dress and grooming, it's good for us to look at those who are mature in the congregation. Yes, what do they wear? What standards have been set within the congregation as a whole? And that will give us some idea as to what type of clothing we should wear.
This is an interesting talk to listen to because he starts it right out with some thought-provoking questions.
The matter of dress and grooming is a deeply personal matter. It's something that elicits all sorts of emotions. But let me just ask at this point, what are you thinking about? Maybe you're thinking, why does he have this hat on his head? Some are thinking, this must be a very defining moment in Brother Jackson's lifetime. Others are thinking, is this a new precedent? We've never done that before. Well, let me take it off.
So hopefully it comes through on the video that you can hear the laughter in the background as he asks those three questions. I would say, speaking as somebody who was a witness for 30 odd years, that's kind of nervous laughter we're hearing.
Give me just half a second. What the fuck?
So he frames the questions as being funny, but in reality, as soon as he started speaking while wearing that hat, I guarantee witnesses watching are trying to figure out the angles. Whoa, why is he wearing a hat? That's not normal. We don't wear hats when giving talks. What's changing? Are we going to start wearing hats when giving talks? Is this a new precedent? In Jehovah's Witnesses, as in other high control groups, nobody knows what to think about something new until the man or the men leading the group tell you what to think about it. I'd bet money that there was a big sigh of relief in that Bethel dining room when Jackson took his hat off. Because with that simple gesture, now there's nothing new. There's nothing scary anymore. The world goes back to its comfortable, familiar way that it's always been. And there's no need to have to figure out something new for yourself and whether or not that thinking is in line with everyone else in the group, whether it's an approved opinion for your organization. So as we saw with that talk, we're in the video era now of Jehovah's Witnesses, and it seems like important information is typically released now by video instead of print literature. So as you might imagine, it didn't take too long to find a video about how women need to wear skirts instead of pants to the meetings.
Cecilia was attending meetings regularly, but instead of a skirt, she wore pants to the meeting. So I chatted to Nancy, a sister who at the time was accompanying me to her study most weeks, so that we could try and figure out a way of helping her to make the change she needed to make. It took about a year of gently showing pictures, reviewing the Bible principles, but eventually she did get the point. One of the weekends that she was staying over, I went into her room, and on her bed, neatly laid out, was a skirt and top, ready for the meeting. I thanked Jehovah at that point because finally our patience had been rewarded.
So this was an October 2021 JW Broadcasting segment. It's the last reference I have, and I think it's a good one because it really drives home in full color that if you want to be a witness and you're a woman, you cannot wear pants to the meetings, on the stage, or in the field ministry. I mean, this segment wasn't out of the blue. It was totally scripted beforehand as far as what they wanted to say, what points to make, has the complete approval of the governing body. They wanted this message disseminated to every witness woman in the organization. So I think, as we've seen, the scriptural support for that policy of not wearing pants is very thin. There's about as much support for that as there is for forbidding beards in the organization. And so I don't know, since the beard prohibition has been rolled back now, I do hope that the next policy change is that witness women can wear pants in religious settings. It's really hard to imagine, but the beards being allowed was really hard to imagine too. So it seems like anything is possible after this policy change. We'll have to stay tuned and see what happens. Well, thanks for watching, and subscribe if you'd like to, and we'll catch you all in the next video. Take care now.